people get confused about a certain thing, that will wife get the husband's property? Will husband get the wife's property? One special right that wife gets is that the right to reside. ये right एक special right है जो divorce के बाद wife can have. ऐसा कभी नहीं होता है कि husband का कुछ property है, wife is saying this is my property. They cannot do that. They can say give me maintenance.
What if I don't want to give maintenance to my wife?
There is as such no law which will say you cannot give maintenance just by your choice. 498A का offense जो है that is a cognizable offense. Cognizable का मतलब पुलिस आके without warrant they can arrest. तो आप डिवोर्स के बाद वाइफ बोल रहे हैं कि दैट इज माई प्रॉपर्टी ऑल्सो, माई नेम इज देयर, इट्स अ जॉइंट प्रॉपर्टी. बट यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, हस्बैंड इज पेइंग द एंटायर EMI अमाउंट. मेनी women misuse it. Many women just files FIR in 498A and then file cases for cruelty, and they just want to harass their in-laws.
तो आज के पॉडकास्ट में आप सभी का स्वागत है. उम्मीद है आप सबका दिन अच्छा रहा होगा. तो सबसे पहले मैं अपने गेस्ट से चाहूंगा कि वो हमें अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा बताएं.
Hello, I'm Ishita Chatterjee. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing property matters and family matters for over 8 years now. So I've practiced in Calcutta High Court, family courts, and other consumer courts.
तो before we start, let's talk about the fundamentals of the property law. कि मतलब उनके fundamental principles क्या होते हैं and how they evolved over the time.
So property law is basically the laws and regulation that guides the rules of ownership and transfer of property. So यहाँ पे इस laws में लिखा हुआ है कैसे कोई property own करेगा, कैसे वो property को transfer करेगा, and when those rights are infringed, legal remedies क्या होगा वो property के लिए. Those are written under the property laws. So before understanding how the property law evolved over time, you have to understand what is property, what falls under property. So basically property को हम दो types में divide कर सकते हैं. One is corporeal property, another one is incorporeal property. Corporeal property क्या होता है, जो सारा tangible properties होता है, the things that we can touch, we can feel, वो सारा होता है corporeal property. और incorporeal properties क्या होता है, जो properties we cannot see, जो intangible है, we cannot see, we cannot feel, but it's there. Those are incorporeal property. Incorporeal properties जो होता है उसके अंदर क्या आता है, जो copyrights होता है, trademark होता है, all these, even a goodwill of a person, all this falls under incorporeal property. Now under corporeal property there are two types of property, movables and immovable. Movable means something that we can move, right? Like our gadgets, phone, jewelries, all these things, our cars. And immovables are properties that we cannot move, like our house. So these movables and immovable properties are guided under the Property Act of 1882. Now, ऐसा लगेगा कि 1882 में प्रॉपर्टी लॉ आया तो बिफोर दैट व्हाट हैपेंड, क्या किसी के पास प्रॉपर्टी नहीं था? इट वाज नॉट लाइक दैट. So before 1882, what happens? There were no uniform law in India which guides the laws regarding the property. So before Transfer of Properties Act, there were like different laws in different parts of India. Like there were many different regulation, different rules. Bombay Land Revenue Act was Bombay Land Revenue Code was there. Patni Regulation Acts, all these kind of laws were there. In some places also English laws were followed because before 1882 Britishers were still ruling. So English laws were followed, local customs were followed. Now judges used to give their judgment based on the principle of justice, equity. So the main drawback of that time was that no uniform law. एक एक पार्ट में एक एक लॉ होगा तो ट्रांसफर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी में देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ डिफिकल्टीज. सो आफ्टर द एनैक्टमेंट ऑफ ट्रांसफर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टीज एक्ट, द सम पार्ट्स ऑफ द प्रॉपर्टी लॉ came under one regulation, like all the movables and immovables, how they will be transferred. There were certain guidelines. The transfer of property law completely exhaustive nahi tha. That means like all kind of transfer did not fall under Transfer of Property Act. I'm coming into that. But there, it was, the law of property was in a better condition than it was before. Okay. So what happens when the constitution came? It was declared initially that right to property is a fundamental right. So what happened? What are the fundamental rights? Like, the fundamental rights are the basic human rights. So property became a basic human right at that time. So in 1978, when 44th Amendment was made to the Constitution of India, it is a very important amendment. So there lots of changes were made. वहाँ पे क्या change हुआ? जो property जो declare किया हुआ था, property का right, fundamental right है, वो change करके Article 300A में, from Article 19 it came to Article 300A as a legal right, as a constitutional right. Like, you can own a property, but it is not your basic human right. So after that, the lots of other changes also came into the property law. So in 1882 Act, there were certain limitations, right? So the property, that act only gives right, mentions the like certain types of transfer. When a transfer is made by two living parties, then only it is guided by the property law, the Property Act of 1882. So now, like, हमको पता है, like, ऑलवेज ट्रांसफर ऐसे नहीं होता है कि दोनों लिविंग पार्टीज के अंदर ही प्रॉपर्टी ट्रांसफर हो रहा है. व्हेन यू आर इनहेरिटिंग समथिंग, जब कोर्ट का ऑर्डर में से यू आर गेटिंग सम प्रॉपर्टी, सो ऑल दिस थिंग्स ये प्रॉपर्टी एक्ट गाइड नहीं करता है. नाउ दीज विल फॉल अंडर द सक्सेशन एक्ट, or execution of degree is completely done by the court, so it won't fall under the Transfer of Property Act. So we can say that this act was not an exhaustive act. Like, this act does not cover the entirely about the property law. Like, intellectual property के बारे में कुछ mention ही नहीं है. Transfer of property कैसे होगा, intellectual property कैसे rights मिलेगा. All these things are not even mentioned in the Property Act of 1882. Now, what is mentioned in this act? Okay, property will always have owners. Like, there will be no property without any owner, and how it will be transferred between two living parties. What are the rules regarding that? About mortgage, about sale, all these things are mentioned in the Property Act. So later on, क्या हुआ? यहाँ पे Succession Act भी आया, Registration Act आया, Stamp Act आया. All these acts, all these different rules, and some regional rules are still there, which guides how a property will be transferred. And if you want to file a partition suit, that is also guided separately. So all these rules came into force later on, and we also realized that we need to have right to our intellectual property. So copyright law आया, trademark law आया. So that's how it evolved over time, and it is still evolving.
तो जैसे आपने बात की इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी की, जैसे कॉपीराइट और पेटेंट्स की, तो हाउ डू दे फिट इनटू द ब्रॉडर फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ द प्रॉपर्टी लॉ? वो किस तरीके से फिट होता है?
सो प्रॉपर्टी लॉ, लाइक आई सेड बिफोर, दो टाइप का प्रॉपर्टी होता है, एक टैंजिबल और इंटैंजिबल. जो टैंजिबल होता है उसके बारे में तो सारा प्रॉपर्टी लॉ, सक्सेशन एक्ट, ये सारे में कवर हो रहा है. नाउ इंटैंजिबल प्रॉपर्टी क्या होता है? व्हेन इट इज क्रिएटेड बाय आवर इंटेलेक्ट, जो जिसका कोई फॉर्म नहीं है. यू कैन नॉट कीप समथिंग एंड से दिस इज माई इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी. लाइक, इट हैज टू बी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ रिटन फॉर्म और एन आइडिया. ये कोई आइडिया आपको आया, यू गिव इट अ फॉर्म, सो दैट थिंग is does not have any existence as such, right? So these kind of things fall under the intellectual property. So it is in the broader sense of property. Like, usually what we use as a properties are movable and immovable tangible properties, or intangible properties जो होता है, those are intellectual properties. Now these are the creations of mind, okay, but tangible property जो होता है, those are not creation of mind, those are things, and intangible are creation of mind. So these kind of properties are exclusive right of the creators. जो बना रहा है, when it is a movable property or when it is an immovable property which are tangible, वहां पे जो बना रहा है उसका as such कोई right नहीं होता. Whoever is creating, that person is not, we know that, right? That person won't be getting any right. But the person who is creating himself or herself, uh, what do you say? Suppose someone is writing a story, that is creation of that person's mind, right? Or writing a song, that kind of property will fall under intellectual property, and the right of that person will be guided by the Copyright Act. Same way for new inventions, there are that new invention, new design, all these things falls under intellectual property. So like there are certain similarities, like in property laws there are documentation to declare the ownership, like deeds, lease, etc. And in intellectual property laws or IP laws, there is patent assignment, there is licensing agreement, there is if you want to transfer, there is copyright transfer, etc. All these kind of documents are there, which will protect the right of a person who is creating that property or help the person to transfer the property. And the common principles are why these things are also properties. The common principles are these, like a house or a uh, or jewelries, car. The intellectual properties also have ownerships. These properties also need protection. These properties can be transferred. There are legal remedies if someone infringe your right regarding these properties. So that's how it falls in the broader framework of the property law.
ओके तो अगर मैं प्रॉपर्टीज को डिफाइन करूँ ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ पर्पस, लाइक कमर्शियल पर्पसेस के लिए या रेजिडेंशियल पर्पस के लिए या इंडस्ट्रियल पर्पस के लिए, तो प्रॉपर्टीज लॉज जो होते हैं हाउ डू दे डिफर अगर हम रेजिडेंशियल किसी प्रॉपर्टी की बात करें या कमर्शियल की या किसी इंडस्ट्रियल की, तो किस तरीके से डिफर करते हैं इन डिफरेंट सिनेरियोज?
सो द थिंग इज, जो होता है रेसिडेंशियल प्रॉपर्टी का पर्पस क्या होता है यूज करने का, समवन विल स्टे, दे वोंट बेनिफिट फ्रॉम दैट प्रॉपर्टी. व्हेन अ कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टी इज देयर, people will make some benefit out of it. Industrial property may be same. Now the term industrial property actually like leaves out the Copyright Act, so it's better to use the term intellectual property as a whole. If we say just industrial property, it doesn't include the copyright. So all this, the commercial and industrial property have same kind of intention. Like someone who is owning a commercial property or industrial property, the intention is same. They want to profit from it. And residential property में ऐसा profit नहीं होता. तो naturally different laws guides different all these different types of property. Residential में basically the main acts which guides the residential properties are Transfer of Property Act of 1882, which I was talking about. Then RERA is there for real estate properties, the Real Estate Regulation and Development Act, and the Registration Act is there for registering a property. When you're using a property for residential purpose, if you're owning the property, you'll register it. That all those guidelines are written in the Registration Act. Then there are laws for rent control. So if you're staying in a rented place, then there are certain laws regarding rent control for tenants. So all these are written in rent control laws. Then for every area, different local areas, there are local regulation, there are zoning regulation, then there is Stamp Duty Act. All these all these laws are important for residential properties. Now for commercial properties also these laws are important. Also Contract Act is there, which guides the commercial properties. The income tax is there. When you're profiting from something, naturally the intervention of income tax comes there. So when industrial properties are concerned, then there are many laws regarding that also. So Copyright Act is also there for intellectual property, and other laws are the Patent Acts, the Trademark Acts. All these things are there. There is also another act for farmers' right. So when any new crops or any new what do you say, plant variety is created. So those things are the right of that particular farmer who has created that. So the protection of plant varieties and the Farmers' Right Act is there. Then Semiconductor Integrated Circuits Layout Designs Act, all these acts are there that guides the industrial properties.
ओके तो लेट्स सपोज आई वांट टू इन्वेस्ट इन एनी प्रॉपर्टी, मेरे को कोई प्रॉपर्टी पसंद आती है, मुझे इन्वेस्ट करना
Yes.
है, तो आफ्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट तो मेरे पास कौन कौन से डॉक्यूमेंट्स होने चाहिए इन एडवांस ताकि इन द फ्यूचर कोई डिस्प्यूट ना हो उस प्रॉपर्टी की वजह से, या प्रॉपर्टी मेरी ही रहे, मतलब उस प्रॉपर्टी पे कोई अगर कब्जा कर भी ले तब भी फैसला मेरे फेवर में आए, मतलब कुछ आप मेरे को ऐसे एडवाइस करो.
Okay, so the most important documents that one should have when you're investing in a property is the title deed and mother deed. Okay, the title deed मतलब जो deed recent हुआ है जिसमें declare किया हुआ है who is the owner of the property, and mother deed is the deed before. उसके पहले भी तो ट्रांसफर हुआ था ना, प्रॉपर्टी किसी का रहता है, उसके बाद suppose A is transferring property to B, B is then selling the property to C. So दोनों डेट ही होना चाहिए when you are investing in a property. And then the land अगर है तो वो फ्री है कि नहीं, क्या कंस्ट्रक्शन कैसा है, इसके लिए इनकम्बरेंस सर्टिफिकेट इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट व्हेन यू आर इन्वेस्टिंग इन अ प्रॉपर्टी. देन द प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स रिसीट, क्या प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स इस क्लियर हुआ है या देर इज पेंडिंग टैक्स या यू हैव टू पे दैट टैक्स. All these kind of ideas should be clear. Next is the building plan, and by building plan, the current building plan. So if it is a house, if it is a like a long structure, tall structure of building, whatever that is, you should have the current building plan. Okay, you should ask the previous owner for all these documents, and you should also re-verify like whether those documents are correct or not. Then approved building plan is you have to take. Then occupancy certificate if any occupants are there, and all these things you have to ask for. And then if you're like investing in a property and then the property has just been built, okay, and they are giving you that property, so the completion certificate should be there if the construction is completed. So you have to confirm it, you have to get the certificate and confirm it from the local authorities, like whether that construction has been completely completed or not, and how the land is used, how that property is used, whether it is used for residential purpose, whether it is used for commercial purpose. All these things you have to check. And other than that, I think you should have NOCs, right? So the whether the property and the land was land, or that, or if there is a construction, suppose sorry, if there is a construction, then for water, electricity, there should be NOCs from those department. And if it is used for commercial purpose, then the environmental clearance is also important, that certificate should be there. And if any mutation has happened recently, then the mutation document should be there. And if you do the mutation after owning it, that document should also be with you all the time. And if there is any power of attorney you're giving to someone, then that document should be there. Then the sale agreement or sale deed, whatever you're making, that should be with you. Then the possession letter, if you're taking possession of any apartment, the possession letter should be there. If your apartment or your building belong to a society, then the documents of the society should be there. Then if there is any loan, then the loan documents should be with you. The latest survey sketch of the entire property, that should include the boundaries of that property, whether it is a flat, whether it is a house, whether it is an entire building, whether it is a high rise, whatever you're investing in, the boundaries of that property should be clear, and you should have the recent sketch all the time. Yes.
ओके तो अगर मैं बात करूं, यूजली गवर्नमेंट से होती हैं, कुछ प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी को अक्वायर करके उसको पब्लिक यूज के लिए इस्तेमाल करती
Yes.
हैं. तो कैन वी डिस्कस द कंसेप्ट ऑफ एमिनेंट डोमेन और वो किस तरीके से सरकार यूज करती है इस चीज के
So
लिए?
eminent domain is the concept जिसमें गवर्नमेंट अथॉरिटी प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी को अक्वायर कर लेता है. क्यों? Just they don't feel like this is a nice property, let's acquire it. Doesn't work like that. It is usually in the light of a legitimate concern for overall population. So broader population when is जो बहुत सारा लोग है वो affected हो रहा है कुछ greater cause में. Suppose they are acquiring a property and they are building a road which will be helpful for everyone, for the entire locality. For so क्या हो रहा है कि 10 लोगों का प्रॉपर्टी को लेकर they are helping 10,000 people. So the intention of the government is to give a legitimate right to a lot of people, to all, many of its citizens. So that time they can acquire any private property and they have to show the reason, and this is known as eminent domain. So इसमें टू थिंग के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है एमिनेंट डोमेन. एक हो रहा है कि वेलफेयर ऑफ द जनरल पॉपुलेशन, सो मैक्सिमम पीपल का प्रॉफिट हो रहा है इनमें. और नेक्स्ट इट इज फॉर द ग्रेटर नेसेसिटी ऑफ द पब्लिक. सो पब्लिक का बहुत ज्यादा उपकार हो रहा है, लाइक दे आर गेटिंग बेनिफिटेड फ्रॉम इट. सो दैट टाइम government can acquire that property and government can give it to the public general. So after article 19 of the constitution was amended, or right to property jab 300A में आ गया, like so the that time property became, from fundamental right property became a legal right. So legal right होने के बाद government के पास ये right आया कि they can acquire the property, because it's, if it is a fundamental right, nobody can interfere with it. That will be considered as a basic human right. But if it is a legal right for greater good, government is getting that right to get the property. Suppose they are building a bridge, they are building metro का suppose construction चल रहा है. That time एक जगह में 3 buildings गिराने से क्या होगा, वहां से metro का line करना easier होगा. So for greater good, they are doing, they are acquiring those properties. So this government can do with reasonable, like reasonable grounds should be there for such act. This is how they can acquire the property. So,
तो डू यू थिंक कि एमिनेंट डोमेन का मिसयूज भी हो सकता है, मतलब सरकार अपने फायदे के लिए भी कुछ कर सकती है, मतलब?
see, whenever government's acts should not be for their own benefit, like in usual sense, the government's act should be for the public, right? So eminent domain का right constitution में दिया गया है, right? Constitution में 44th amendment में this doctrine of eminent domain was added. So government can never use this right for their own good, right? So usually government have to show the reason. Like ऐसे आके तुम्हें मुझे ये घर अच्छा लगा, like I am acquiring it. Government cannot do that. They have to show reason. Like I am building this road, I am building a dam, I am building a forest. All these kind of things, they should satisfy the that this is the reason why I am doing. Otherwise, if they just start acquiring private property for their own need, there will be like a chaos everywhere. So this cannot be misused as such, because they have to show what they are doing. Yes.
ओके, तो अब हम थोड़ा सा, अब मैं चाहता हूँ थोड़ी सी हम बात करेंगे डिवोर्स के बाद की प्रॉपर्टी के बारे में, कि आफ्टर डिवोर्स की प्रॉपर्टी डिवीजन किस तरीके से होता है, और इंक्लूडिंग द वैल्यूएशन ऑफ एसेट्स एंड एलोकेशन ऑफ डेब्ट्स. तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप हमें ये प्रोसेस एक्सप्लेन करें ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी डिवीजन आफ्टर डिवोर्स.
Okay. So as such, first thing we have to make very clear, like people get confused about a certain things, that will wife get the husband's property? Will husband get the wife's property? So divorce के बाद ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है कि ownership change हो जाता है. That never happens. One special right that wife gets is that the right to reside. ये right एक special right है जो divorce के बाद wife can have. That is, जो residential house में wife और husband रह रहे थे, the wife after divorce can say that I want to reside in that house. राइट टू रिसाइड के अंदर ओनरशिप नहीं आता है. सो वाइफ कैन नॉट क्लेम एनीथिंग दैट हस्बैंड ओन्स एज हर ओन, और हस्बैंड कैन नॉट क्लेम एनीथिंग दैट वाइफ ओन्स एज हिज ओन. what happens after divorce is that right to residence जो है वो तो वाइफ के पास होता है, and either wife or husband both can claim for maintenance if that person is not earning. ये भी बहुत दिन से ये मिसयूज हो रहा था कि मेंटेनेंस सिर्फ वाइफ क्लेम कर सकता है, हस्बैंड क्लेम नहीं कर सकता है, बट दैट हैज आल्सो चेंज. recent judgment is there where court has granted maintenance to the husband. So what happens is the ownership never changes. ऐसा कभी नहीं होता है कि हस्बैंड का कुछ प्रॉपर्टी है, वाइफ इज सेइंग दिस इज माय प्रॉपर्टी. दे कैन नॉट डू दैट. दे कैन से गिव मी मेंटेनेंस, नॉट ओनरशिप. नाउ समटाइम्स व्हाट हैपन that wife and husband they own a property jointly. ठीक है, तो that time that joint ownership won't be treated differently than other joint ownership just because they are getting divorced or just because they were married at one point. It won't be treated like that. Joint ownership का मतलब है equal rights. किसी को ज्यादा किसी को कम नहीं मिलेगा. But sometimes what happen, for saving the stamp money, husbands always get 50% ownership, wife ko deke they are getting a joint property. But whatever the EMI of the loan is there, husband is paying that amount. So आप divorce के बाद wife बोल रहा है कि that is my property also, my name is there, it's a joint property. But यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, husband is paying the entire EMI amount. So husband, that means ownership should have been husband's because उसका ही पैसा गया वहां पे. So that time usually the litigation comes to court. Litigants comes to court. They file cases. That wife is saying this is my property. Husband is saying मैंने पैसा दिया, this is my property. So that time what happens, if the husband can prove that see these are the EMI documents, these money are deducted from my account. So that time if the husband can prove that and show valid documents, court can say कि हाँ, that means husband has given everything, husband has invested in the property, this is husband's property. So husband has to come clear about this. I have even if the court asks like why you have purchased the property in both of your names if you are going to invest, husband has to be honest about it, whether it was for love and affection or whether it was for saving the stamp duty. The husband has to say that to the court and the judge will decide based on the documents. But if the equal amount were invested from both husbands and wives account, then they will have equal rights on the property. The joint ownership will any other joint ownership जैसे treated होता है कि दोनों ओनर का equal share या फिर जो परसेंटेज लिखा है 40-60 जैसा भी लिखा हो वैसे शेयर जैसे ट्रीटेड होता है, सेम लॉस विल फॉल अंडर दैट. दे कैन बी डिवोर्स एंड इफ देयर इज अ गुड रिलेशन बिटवीन देम, they can be divorced and they can continue to own the property, or one person can sell, one person can keep, whatever that is, they can do it. Now what happens, sometimes there is loan, there is a loan on something and that is continuing. Now if the loan is on both of the person's name, loan will continue equal liability and both of them have to pay. Now sometimes difficulties are there, like because of some grudge, because of some grudge on the husband, the wife has stopped paying her share of EMIs. So these kind of things happen. That time the husband has to go to court and say like this person is not paying, what should we do? Then the judge will decide. Now otherwise, like all kind of ownership and the legal rights regarding the property stays the same after the divorce.
ओके, ये थोड़ा सा सेल्फिश क्वेश्चन होगा एक तरीके से.
हाँ.
लेट्स सपोज आई एम द डिवोर्स्ड हस्बैंड.
Okay.
लेट्स सपोज एक सिनेरियो कंसीडर करते हैं. तो व्हाट इफ आई डोंट वांट टू गिव मेंटेनेंस टू माय वाइफ, मुझे नहीं देनी है लेट्स सपोज, तो मैं क्या कौन सा लॉ यूज कर सकता हूँ?
So there is as such no law which will say you cannot give maintenance just by your choice. हर एक केस में आपको reasonable grounds दिखाना है. Suppose what happens sometimes, the wife has some money but that person is filing for maintenance just to extort money from the husband. This happens. It's not nothing new. Like we all know, right? So what happened that time, the husband has to show like why I'm not paying maintenance, because I have already spent that this much money on wife. That can be one reason, or the main reason can be the wife is working. If a person is working and the person is able to maintain herself, then that person don't need any maintenance. The maintenance क्यों आता है? Usually that this was made initially in for completely different reason. Now it is misuse. पहले क्या होता था? Women never worked. They used to stay at home. And if the husband files a divorce and leaves the wife, then that she has no places to go. From that, the right to reside arose, right? And then she how will she feed her children, right? How will she afford herself? How will she get food? Because wife used to stay at home only, right? When the divorce act, the Hindu marriage act came into force at that time in 1955, 1956, that time uh, very few women started working. So the change was coming. So now what is happening? Women are working and at the same time they're getting angry. Oh, I'm getting a divorce. Now I'll take your money too. So this is like slightly these things was misused. Like a few years back, it was misused very much. But now husband can protect himself if the wife works, or if the wife has reasonable amount of properties and asset where that person can maintain herself. Yes.
ओके, तो लेट्स टॉक अ लिटिल बिट अबाउट फैमिली लॉ मैटर्स। तो सबसे पहला जो मैं बात करना चाहता हूँ, मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप हमारे साथ कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन शेयर करें रिगार्डिंग सेक्शन आईपीसी 498 ए के तहत, जो भी इट डील्स विद आई थिंक वायलेंस डन ऑन वुमेन आफ्टर हर मैरिज बाय हर हस्बैंड या किसी रिलेटिव के।
Yes.
तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि इसके बारे में शेयर करें कि इसमें कमी क्या है बेसिकली, क्योंकि वुमेन्स जो है, मतलब नॉट ऑल वुमेन्स आई एम सेइंग, बट कुछ वुमेन्स हैं जो इसका बहुत बुरे तरीके से एक्सप्लॉइट करती है।
So 498A, initially this section was made to protect women against cruelty done by any of her in-laws. Okay. तो इसलिए ये तब डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस इतना ज्यादा है इंडिया में, सो दैट्स व्हाई देयर वाज अ प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ लॉ नीडेड टू स्टॉप द डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस. सो द पनिशमेंट भी उतना ज्यादा था, इसलिए 3 years जेल और ऑफेंस जो है ये 498A का ऑफेंस जो है दैट इज अ कॉग्निजेबल ऑफेंस. कॉग्निजेबल का मतलब पुलिस आके विदाउट वारंट दे कैन अरेस्ट. एंड देन 498A इज नॉन कॉम्पाउंडेबल, मीन्स यहाँ पे 498A केस होने के बाद यू कैन नॉट कॉम्प्रोमाइज द केस और गेट रिलीफ. Then it is a non bailable, so bail court refuse कर सकता है. Even if you file a bail petition, court has reasonable ground to refuse because you have committed domestic violence. So these are the this is how serious this section is. So now what happened after, again, whenever a law is enacted, it is also misused by many people. So it was created for a greater cause, so that the cruelty against women stops after marriage. So what happened? We every day, like many petitions are filed which are completely false. That is happening, and that क्यों ये होना शुरू क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि ये 498A में अगर कोई FIR करने जाए पुलिस स्टेशन में, then the police has to take the FIR. So and what used to happen, that moment only police used to arrest the in-laws. So some people thought like, yeah, we can do that, we can threaten people with that. So it's the misuse started so much, so people used to like threaten people with this. Even still do. Many women misuse it. Many women just files FIR in 498A and then file cases for cruelty, and they just want to harass their in-laws. So what happened? Court had no other option, but now like in 498A, if anyone files any case, they have to prove like whether it is like a valid case or not. And if a 498A case is filed against someone, then that person can, if the case is false, then that person can file uh, like a section 191 case under CPC, where it is that petition can be filed stating that the case of 498A is completely false. They can do that. And अभी तो उतना ज्यादा अरेस्ट भी नहीं होता है. 498A फाइल करने से ही जो अरेस्ट कर लिया जाता था पहले, that has stopped, completely stopped, and the wife has to prove. Now there is positive and negative side of it. Like previously, some of the victims got relieved, but because of the malpractice of this section, now everyone has to prove whether they were tortured in in-laws. They have to prove whether sometimes what happened, I have seen many cases where the wife wasn't even residing with the husband, okay, and she has filed a 498A. Now if you're not staying with the person now, and there was no contact between them, and suddenly just to harass, she has filed a case. Now that time, if the police come and arrest the husband, and without any reason, if the person is arrested, then that kind of harassment used to affect their regular lifestyle, their career, everything. But now it is the reasonable ground has to be shown, like why they are filing 498A. There should be proper reasonable proof. The husband also can challenge if it is wrong. They can file section 191 of CPC, where they can state that the wife is giving false evidence, and the court will decide who is right and who is wrong.
बट डू यू थिंक कि जो आपने बात की ये कम्प्लीटली स्टॉप हो चुका है? बट आई डोंट थिंक सो कि पूरी तरीके से, मतलब कुछ कमियां तो होती हैं, मतलब हर जगह तो ये प्रॉपर्ली एग्जीक्यूट नहीं
Yeah,
होता
that
होगा.
is,
कुछ जगह.
yes, sometimes laws are created in a very good way, but execution is in our hands, right? जो लोग पुलिस जो है या कोर्ट्स जो है, वो जैसे एग्जीक्यूट करेगा लॉ का एग्जीक्यूशन वैसे होगा. समटाइम्स लाइक 100% बेनिफिट तो कभी किसी लॉ से ऐसे होता नहीं ना, क्योंकि बहुत सारा the person who are filing the cases are there, the police is there, the judge is there, everyone is hearing the matter, and then everyone is presenting their matter, then the judge is deciding what is right and what is wrong, right? So sometimes suppose the person who is the wrongdoer, wo like that person is what can I say? Wait a minute. So sometimes what happens, like the case is misrepresented and it is not properly challenged. So that time the judge obviously cannot decide the case properly. Sometimes the economic condition of the person who has filed the case is not that strong. So they face problem in continuing the case. So they don't get proper justice. These kind of things happens. But if you see it in a broader way, like you cannot see one law at one time, like it changes gradually, so it takes time to take a proper form. Like when before 498A came into force, there was a different kind of society. Now because the rights are given, the society is constantly changing, so for a greater good it is changing, we believe. So misuse will be there, always misuse is there, but for the greater people, like for the husbands and in-laws, the protection is given. Like the judge won't see a 498A petition, and without hearing the husband, they won't give any judgment.